No one puts sequel baby in a corner.
Except every critic, evidently.
Ooh.
Burn! Greetings, friends. Welcome back to Critically Acclaimed, the podcast where highbrow and lowbrow collide.
Boom!
In a fiery fireball of chaos.
Fire!
My name is Witney Seibold. I am a film critic for the internet. And I don't have a cool nickname, so you can just call me Witney.
And my name is Bibbiani. I'm also a critic for the internet, and I don't have a cool nickname either, but I do have a nickname, and you can call me Bibbs. And we're very, very excited. It's our first special guest here at Critically Acclaimed. Woo! The effervescent, the brilliant, the talented, everyone's favorite human Brianne Chandler.
Brianne Chandler's my name, and I do have a cool nickname, guys.
What's your cool nickname?
It's Miss Movies.
That's right.
Whoa. I got really early on that internet and got in there.
Yeah.
Now I'm at Miss Movies
At
on
Miss
Twitter.
Movies.
Nicely done. A lot of people are sort of kicking themselves now. Do you ever come up with like a really cool name for like a website or a YouTube series and just, that's taken. Oh, and it's lame.
Yeah.
Like it's not even like they did something better than I was going to do with it. Like,
Yeah, that really stings. Like, we wanted to, we had a website and name at one point.
Oh, yeah.
One of our many
thing.
schemes, we were going to start our own website. And we had a really cool name for it. William came up with it. Somebody took it. It was like an Instagram account that they hadn't been touching. It was sort of
right.
like some sort of account within an account, and we just weren't allowed to use it.
Yeah.
Tried contacting that guy, never heard back from him.
Nothing we can do.
Probably dead.
Well, there you go.
Died
On
on the website, and we can't use it anymore.
Are you going to tell us what it was going to be called? Or are you going to just leave it at that?
No, because we might still use it.
Our hope is someday we can figure it out.
Yeah.
Okay,
We
so
have-
if you're listening, please guess. Leave it in the comments. Thank you.
Critically acclaimed at gmail.com.
Wouldn't it be, now we should just. It's weird if we didn't call it Critically Acclaimed,
I suppose so.
which is also probably taken. So it's another episode of Critically Acclaimed. It's kind of a weird episode for a couple of reasons.
Well, first of all, it's still early January, as you may have noticed, and as we all know, January is the best time for movies.
January
100%.
January is also called "Fuck You, It's January."
Thanks to Red Letter Media, that is its new nickname.
Yeah, which is just all the crap comes out. For the most part, a few exceptions here and there.
I did hear somebody complain, wait a minute, shouldn't we be getting an Underworld movie about now?
Oh.
No, I think that series has come to a close, as has Resident Evil. Those were last year.
Resident Evil is being rebooted.
Of course it is.
But we have yet another Liam Neeson action vehicle.
We have like,
so...
this is like Taken 8, I think.
Yeah.
Because we had Taken. Taken was Taken
That would
1.
be Tatekin.
T8 Ken.
Taken. That's what it would be. That's what it would be.
How
Sure.
many Taken films are there?
Officially, there's only 3.
Okay.
But-
But however, every Liam Neeson action
Yes.
film made after Taken feels like another
like-
Taken.
Although the Gray was, I think,
We were
different.
wondering
on a
if
different
the
level.
Gray is part of the Taken canon, but Nonstop certainly is.
Yeah.
And what was the one with January Jones? Unknown.
Yeah.
That one definitely
The
is.
Walk Amongst the Tombs.
Again,
Is
that's
that now?
also debatably canon because that actually
Okay.
has like tone and character and isn't
Okay.
just sort of
It's not.
we're gonna watch Liam Neeson punch shit kind of
Yeah,
movie.
and we're gonna watch Liam Neeson be depressed, try to solve a horrific series of murders, and then punch something.
Yeah.
So you try to take all of his action films and put them into the Taken series. Is that what you mean by Taken canon?
Well, kind
Yes.
of like
Okay.
Yeah.
Liam Neeson is, which is
I
really
guess the
funny
Gray could fit. He's like trying to leave.
He's trying to leave, and you know the selling point was he's going to beat up wolves, and I think people were really upset that it's this really kind of nihilistic film, you know, about sort of losing all hope and then gaining the need to survive out in the wild,
Also-
rather than just him like punching wolves in the face.
also a spectacularly inaccurate depiction of wolves.
yes,
Like, really has nothing fucking to do with wolves. Apparently,
Yeah.
like the wolves get demonized enough as it is. I think.
they're like wolf advocacy groups. So every time there's a film,
sanctuary that a friend invited me to, and I was like, "Listen, I'm not doing that."
I went to
She's
a
like,
wolf
"There's
sanctuary.
babies there," and I was like, "They could probably bite my face."
I went to a
don't
wolf
really want to do
sanctuary.
that.
It was
Wolf
really cool,
puppies.
actually.
Yes,
it was nice.
it's not that far from here.
No, it's up. It's up. God, we just went.
Like
It's here in
Moore Park or
California.
something.
Yeah, there's a wolf sanctuary in
Yes.
California. You can look it up. It's really cool. But what's funny is that we're not reviewing Commuter spoiler on this episode. But I feel like Liam Neeson's post-Taken action filmography is kind of like the Steven Seagal filmography. No matter what they are, they feel like they're of a piece.
Yeah.
They feel like any one of them would be a good marathon. Just pick any 5 at random. Boom, you've got a weekend.
Well, watch the Taken films out of order if you can.
So does that mean that Liam Neeson is this generation's Steven Seagal?
Well, here's the strange thing. He's older than Steven Seagal.
I think Liam Neeson's our generation's Charles Bronson.
There you go. That's a much more
I like that comparison.
apt analogy.
Well, you look at Charles Bronson's like 70s, we called them action movies. Nowadays, they'd be dramas with 2 shootouts in them. But you look at films like Death Wish or...
Death Wish 4, The Crackdown.
No. I'm talking about the 70s ones, back when they still had some class. Or you look at The Mechanic, the original Mechanic. Like, those were just kind of serious crime movies. Really, like that just had some punching in them. Like Liam Neeson's action movies try to get themselves taken kind of seriously.
No, I don't know.
They have a serious grimness to them.
He's definitely stooped into Death Wish 3 territory here and there. Now, nothing is as spectacular as Death Wish 3.
What could
Death Wish 3 is the pinnacle of
about it.
cinema.
Okay. Well,
We'll put Death Wish 3 on a future poll. Don't worry,
we should do
listeners.
the whole Death Wish franchise sometime.
I suppose so.
That's the way we should do it. So anyway, here's the funny thing about the new releases, though, is that you're the only one who's seen anything this week.
I only saw 2, so I was only able to see Proud Mary.
I saw 3 movies yesterday in one day, but they
none of them
weren't
were new releases.
new
Yeah, I saw-
releases.
I missed the new release.
I've seen Proud Mary starring Taraji P. Henson, and I saw Paddington 2, the sequel to Paddington 1.
So listen, before we get to our main event, let's run those down, and they'll be relatively short because of what you're talking about.
Run them down in a car. Run down Proud Mary in a car anyway. Proud Mary
Big
is...
wheels keep on turning.
and we have the climax is set to Tina Turner's cover of
It
Proud
should
Mary.
be.
Well, yeah.
As it should
Which is
be.
the more energetic version.
You can't make a movie called Proud Mary and not have Proud
play-
Mary in it. Come on.
Well, but, you could just do the Creedence version.
no, you can't. There is no Creedence version anymore.
Okay. And so Taraji P. Henson in Proud Mary plays Mary. The credits make it look all like 70s funktastic, and they've been selling it as sort of this like neo-blaxploitation thing, where she's like this badass 70s heroine in the vein of Pam Grier.
I was going to say Pam Grier.
Yeah,
get
that's
her
what
in
they're
there.
evoking, but it's not set in the 70s, and it's not fun like those old
Well, that doesn't
70s
make any
films.
sense.
And it's not like really and the story is actually lifted more from that movie Gloria, the one with Jenna Rollins, than it is any blaxploitation movie. So
For those who don't know,
I don't know Gloria.
Gloria is not a particularly popular film anymore.
I just know that
Or
song.
was it ever super popular?
well, it was remade. Sidney Lumet remade
Yeah, with
it.
Sharon Stone, and no one fucking saw it. In
Well,
fact,
I
I think
guess
it
you're
came
right.
out in January. Gloria
You
is
know what? I think you might be right about the remake of Gloria.
Gloria is a film that was directed by John Cassavetes. John Cassavetes was best known for his very serious independent dramas, but then he decided to make essentially an indie action movie about...
As action as Cassavetes could get, anyway. But
Yeah.
Jenna Rollins, his paramour and muse, starred as Gloria, a female assassin who had to found herself having to look after a little
She was
boy.
not a female assassin. She was just a gangster's mole.
Oh, I thought she was like an active member in the...
She was.
It's
She
been
was
a long time
engaged.
since I've
If
seen
memory
Gloria.
serves, she was involved in the mafia, but she didn't actually have a job in it. She was just seen as some hanger
Side
on, some
chick.
girl, side chick, if you will. And she ended up
chick.
She ended up basically without realizing it, obviously not legally, just sort of in custody of this kid who had seen a horrible crime. And she decided to take care of the kid, and she ended up having to
like
kill the
Witness.
guy she worked on. It's not unlike Witness. It's actually it feels more like Leon the Professional than anything.
I think Gloria was like the example of this, of like sort of grizzled criminal having to look after a child. And that's the story of Proud Mary. She, in the opening scenes, she's seen assassinating a dude, and even though she sees that he has a young boy, but the boy doesn't see her, so she's left this kid an orphan. Fast forward a year, the kid is now in the employ of an evil Russian gangster played by Xander Berkeley. Where has he been? And he's like
don't even know.
he's running drugs, and he holds guns on drug dealers, and he's already kind of like completely lost his soul. Mary, who is working for the rival gangster, who's played by Danny Glover, takes him in and puts him in her apartment, and they kind of have to start developing a mother-son relationship while keeping it all secret from all of the gangsters.
Okay.
And of course, this will all end with is she going to reveal that she murdered this kid's father or stepfather? Is it going to come out that what's going on with the rival gangs? She ends up murdering Xander Berkeley pretty early on in the film. That's not a spoiler. It happens in like the first 10 or 15 minutes of the movie. Which might have sparked a gang war. So now she's at the heart of all of this. And the big drama becomes, well, now that she started a gang war, can she leave gang world? Like, in the middle of that.
It's questionable.
I think the answer is yes. I think she just goes and
most of the
moves to
movie
small town America and learns the true meaning of Christmas.
No, she climb over the Alps, with this
she
child.
Spends a lot of time following Danny Glover into big rooms. They have very heady conversations about a gang war. It's really boring gang dialogue, and there's no shootouts, there's no confrontations, there's just sort of going back to make sure the kid's okay. The kid is a jerk, but not in that sort of charming, irascible sort of way. Like, he's not a scamp. He's really kind of mean. And he and Taraji P. Henson never really develop any kind of chemistry where you would think that they would want to spend any time together or that she would necessarily be a good mother figure. Now, Taraji P. Henson is a great actress. I like her a lot. Most people do.
She is one of the most charismatic screen presences I think we have.
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine anyone not having chemistry with Taraji P. Henson.
And the idea of putting Taraji P. Henson in a blaxploitation-inspired actioner is a brilliant idea, but that's not what this movie is. It doesn't have that sort of 1970s vibe. It's just sort of bland and rote. The action sequences aren't really inspired, and there's essentially one shootout kind of in the middle, about an hour in an 88-minute film, and then there's one at the end where, even though the film's rated R, it looks like they tried to take the curse off of a lot of the violence, so a lot of the bullet holes are CGI. The blood was, like, color-corrected. It looks like they darkened it, which I know they do in, like, PG-13 horror films a lot. Like, if somebody bleeds, they try to darken the blood and make it look blacker or less like blood. And for some reason, the MPAA allows a much more lenient rating when they do that.
That's not always true. In fact, if you look at Evil Dead 2, Sam Raimi's Evil Dead 2, there's gallons of blood, geysers of blood in that, and his whole thing was, well, if I make the blood green, they'll cut me some slack. And they did not, and that movie ended up being released unrated.
I think it was almost like the first one was NC-17 for a second.
Or released unrated again.
And it was one of the video nasties, I know that much.
Yeah, and then the second one, he wanted to try to make it at least an R.
Yeah.
And he couldn't do it. He couldn't even cut James in the Color of Blood, couldn't even get him an R.
But for some reason, though, they just used really horrible darkened blood effects in there. And it's CGI blood, which I hate. It
never looks good.
Never, ever looks good. So,
you want to see what's the best squib work you've ever seen in a movie?
Well, it's got to be something by Peckinpah, probably.
Oh, it's RoboCop.
Oh, well, yeah, RoboCop.
Squibs in RoboCop are disgusting. They're just repellent,
it's like an entire
explosions.
Chicken's worth of blood sprays out of people's bodies.
But it's practical.
Oh my
and
gosh,
you
have
feel
you guys seen the My RoboCop remake that people did on the internet?
No.
Oh, okay, you gotta watch this. This is where basically people were like, we want to do a RoboCop remake. We want everyone to join us. So if you want to participate, email us and we'll give you your scene. And so they gave out scenes and then they strung it all together. There is a scene that I was just dying laughing, and it has to do with shooting off genitalia, and it just like kept going and going. Like, and you're like, when is this gonna end? Oh my god!
Paul Verhoeven's probably looking upon that and smiling.
It's one of the best things I think I've seen. Like you will be on the floor laughing, I guarantee. So check that out. My RoboCop remake.
You do be better to watch the My RoboCop remake than Proud Mary.
Well, it doesn't sound like it's terrible. It just sounds like it's kind of,
It's just sort of a wasted opportunity. It's just sort of bland. Its only virtue is that it's short, which is never a good thing to say about a movie.
No.
And it's also, a lot of people were crying foul before it came out, assuming that this is some sort of classic that the studio was burying because it was pushed back. They scaled way back on the advertising, and then it comes out the second week in January.
Well, because they realized it wasn't good.
Well,
is that sometimes what happens?
Usually, this never happens with a great film. All right, the studios don't say, okay, we're going to hide this, and people will have to find it, and it's going to be a cult classic in 20
Sometimes
years.
the movie is better than the studio thinks. It's rarely a great film, but it goes even beyond that because not only there's almost no advertising for it. Not only did they not screen it for critics, they didn't even screen screen it for the press doing the interviews ahead of time.
Yeah,
right.
That almost never happens. And apparently, and I saw this online. I didn't do the full due diligence, but apparently, the studio, not only did the studio not do like 8 p.m., 10 p.m. screenings on Thursdays, apparently at the 0 hour that night, they decided to cancel the midnight screening on Thursdays. After tickets had been sold.
Well,
it's in many markets.
Luckily, that's how I saw it. I saw a Thursday screening in Sherman Oaks, California. So I was...
Didn't hit everyone.
They weren't all put the
I
kibosh
heard
wasn't put on all of
reports.
them.
The point is that the studio is just burying this thing.
Yeah,
Like,
and it turns out it's a dud, and it has nothing to do with market segmentation or.
But what isn't a dud is Paddington 2.
What? Thank you for segueing me away. Paddington 2 stars Taraji P. Henson as an assassin. No, although this one could be called Paddington Goes to Jail, because much of the film takes place in a prison.
And then he gets electro powers.
Oh, that would have been great.
Yeah, and then there's another Paddington, like an evil Paddington with his family.
The first Paddington is gentle and
Ernest Goes to Jail
sweet,
reference.
and I mean the original Paddington Bear books are all very gentle and very sweet and very British.
Yes.
And it's all about being kind and polite. And
Yes.
the first movie took that message to heart and told a very gentle story about a bear getting along with people, even though he ruins their bathroom.
Well, he
destroys a lot of things.
Well, he is a bear. I mean,
He's a
let's
bear.
just be real.
And what I love about that movie is actually a really sweet story about the immigrant experience.
Yeah, about finding a new family.
Yeah, finding a new family in a new country, in a new culture that you don't understand. And he's totally innocent, and he gets things wrong sometimes, and sometimes it's uncomfortable, but everyone just loves each other.
Yeah.
It is so sweet and so funny, and I love the first Paddington.
I think the first Paddington is fine.
Slap!
But I love Paddington 2.
Okay, fine.
In fact, I kind of adore Paddington 2. In fact, I kind of cried a little bit during Paddington 2. So Paddington is now still living with the same family. Sally Hawkins' is mom. I forgot the actor who plays the dad.
Not Colin Firth.
The not Colin Firth character. And there's two kids. The teenage boy tries to be cool, but he's actually secretly into steam trains, which is not cool. and the teenage girl has almost no character whatsoever. But the street he lives on has now been unified by Paddington. Just everybody knows him as a neighbor.
He's the mascot
been
of
welcomed
the
as part
street.
of...
Hugh Bonneville
Hugh Bonneville
is the name of the father.
is the not Colin Firth character.
Yeah.
But he's very concerned because his aunt, the bear, who still lives in Bearland...
In Peru.
That's
Darkest Peru.
Darkest Peru.
Okay.
It's her birthday, and he needs to find the perfect gift, and he thinks he found it. Jim Broadbent, who plays the eccentric antique shop dealer, has pointed him to a pop-up book that has famous landmarks of London. He's like, well, I can show this to her. And there's a really fantastic animated sequence where he's reading through the book, and the camera zooms down into the book, and the entire
I love that.
city turns into paper, and all the people turn into paper, and a miniature Paddington and his aunt are kind of touring London in this paper universe. It's a really great sequence.
Sounds amazing.
And he says, yes.
This is where you cried.
It's where I was like, that's really beautiful. And this is early in the movie. It's like, oh crap, I'm going to cry at the end of this. And he decides he wants it, but evidently it's really rare, and he needs 1,000 pounds to get it.
Okay.
So he decides to take a job. He's a window washer. He rubs his furry body on windows, and that does the trick, and he starts earning a lot of money. But a local actor, an overactor, played by Hugh Grant, who is whose career is long over and is now reduced to working in dog food commercials because he refuses to act with other actors, and who keeps all of his costumes in his attic, so he's a little off, has learned about this book and actually knows that it's secretly a treasure map.
There it is.
He steals it. Paddington tries to stop him. He chases him down the street. The police mix them up, and Paddington goes to jail for stealing the pop-up book, which is
We got to figure out how Paddington's going to get out of that. Don't tell me.
He doesn't actually. It's like
That's
60
where it
years
ends.
goes by, and he just dies in jail. It's a real bummer. Spoiler alert, everybody.
And he just becomes this hardened criminal. It's like that
wanna
movie
see him talking to
Bronson,
Bale's
where
Bronson.
he strips naked.
Bear
and just
Bronson.
beats up. Oh god.
I want to see that.
And of course, Paddington, being such a sweet, innocent soul, ends up brightening up the prison while he's there.
Of course he does.
He tries the food, and it's just gritty and terrible, and he decides to confront the cook. The cook is played by Brendan Gleeson
Yay!
Glad
as
he's working.
Knuckles McGinty. And if you complain, you go to the infirmary. That's the way it works with Knuckles McGinty. And he says, well, why don't I teach you how to make marmalade? And he accidentally tastes some, and there's this weird cathartic moment where he tastes marmalade for the first time. Knuckles McGinty's like, you will teach me how to make this marmalade. He makes marmalade, and all the prisoners are happy, and they love it, and he ends up turning the entire prison commissary into essentially a high-end dessert bar, where there's like macarons and little cakes and sandwiches everywhere.
I gotta see
and you
this.
kind of believe it because Paddington is such a sweet soul. It's like, yeah, of course he'd just sort of, his sweetness would bleed out into the walls of a prison.
Yeah. No, that's kind of the whole point of a story like this.
It eventually
Goodness prevails.
turns into a big action spectacular where the book is being thrown around on two simultaneously moving trains, and
Whoa.
as kids' films typically
And there's
do.
Liam Neeson right there, the commuter.
I would like to... I'm just going to say this right now.
There's a weird reference to The Shape of Water because Sally Hawkins
Well,
is
yeah,
in
but
it.
like didn't have to reference
it's
it.
not it's not a reference, but you'll be
Something
thinking
about a
it.
fish.
Egg timer.
Well, one of Sally Hawkins' ambitions in the movie is to swim the channel, so she's in water a lot. So
okay,
you're
there
going to
you
be
go.
thinking of it.
I don't want you to tell me the ending because obviously it's the ending of the movie. We don't want to spoil it. What I will say is that I hope at the end that when they find the treasure turns out to be the friends that they've made along the way.
Yes. Yes.
And it turns out the real treasure was family.
That's what I want. I want to be buried with the treasure map. This is one of my stipulations when I die. I want to be buried. I want to be buried with a treasure map, and I want the treasure map to lead eventually after like a whole international.
Continental, yeah.
I want
The whole Da
adventures.
Vinci Code,
I want
yes.
a fucking motorcycle chase on the Great Wall of China, and then I want it to lead back to my grave, and then I want everyone to find there'd be like a mirror underneath my corpse, and the treasure was inside you.
Oh, God.
That's my fantasy.
And it's underneath your corpse, which is handy because they'll just want to start punching you right then.
Well, yeah, that's why I left my corpse there.
Okay, so
Yeah.
it is, you jerk! I went all around the world just to find the family.
Yes, the treasure was inside you. Use your anger. Let it flow through you.
What movie was it where it was one of those international chases and they were looking for like a piece of microfilm and it turned out to be a recipe? I think it was like one of those live action Disney films.
That was What's Up Tiger Lily was about like an egg salad recipe.
Yeah, I think there was a live action Disney film from like the 60s or 70s that had the same plot point.
Okay, weird. I don't know. I remember.
Okay.
Wasn't Midnight
So
Madness?
wait, we're looking for a recipe?
No, well, they were looking for a treasure map, and they
Okay.
found this thing, and they thought it was going to be a treasure map. It turned out to be this long-lost recipe.
Oh.
That sounds
Which-
like a Disney
Indeed.
thing, and I cannot for the life of me.
Which, you
Sounds
know,
like the plot of No Mobile 3.
which is in production now that you said it.
Damn it! We're gonna have a grim and gritty reboot of the No Mobile.
A check for a nickel just came in the mail because Disney just bought that idea from you. And they're going to put it into production.
Shiny nickel. Thanks,
get-
Disney.
You get no royalties. That's your nickel.
Oh, Disney, keep the nickel. Just re-release the Ewok movies on DVD. That's all I want.
I want to see a big screen release of the holiday special. Done all like special edition
ain't
where
happening.
they add stuff and like put in CG characters. They add another like Cirque du Soleil
Change the
dance
plot.
sequence.
That's what would have happened if 20th Century Fox had bought Disney instead of the other way around.
Oh, there you go.
It's like,
Look at all this gold we've got.
we're gonna do to Star Wars what we did to the Fantastic Four movies.
Woo! Oh golly. Don't get my hopes up.
Slap.
But anyway, those are the two new releases I saw. I did not see The Commuter, so I cannot comment on
Yeah,
it.
I meant to see The Commuter, and then life got in the way.
That Paddington 2 is such a sweet, wonderful, moving movie. It reminded me of Babe, Pig in the City, just without kind of that film's edge.
Yeah,
Like,
Big
it
Pig
does-
City is really dark
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah,
It's brilliant, but it's dark.
It's just as colorful and as delightful as visually interesting and explosive as that.
Was that
movie.
also George Miller?
That was George Miller.
Yeah.
He didn't do the first Babe, he did the second
Second,
Babe.
okay.
Yeah.
I'll say this: I think Babe, Pig in the City is better directed than Mad Max Fury Road. I think he
I
makes.
think
I think he
there's
makes a
an
lot
argument.
more. I think he makes a lot more innovative, creative decisions.
I would argue
I think
that-
he moves the camera a lot more dynamically in that film.
I'm going to say this right now. I think there's an argument to be made that it's better directed, but I still think Fury Road is the better overall film. I think.
I can jive with that.
Okay, fine. So on our critically acclaimed scale of C- to C+, what do you give? What do you give Proud Mary?
Well, you see on the B Movies podcast, the previous iteration of this podcast, I suppose that's how we could describe it.
Our predecessor.
We had B minus, B and B plus.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now that we
Because
are
it's B movies.
critically acclaimed with a C, we are C minus to C plus. Proud Mary is a C minus, most assuredly. It's just a dull flick. And Paddington 2 is a C plus for sure, because I was delighted and it made me cry, and it's very sweet, and I think you should take your kids to that instead of, I don't know, what else is playing
Car
right now.
Horn
Commuter,
3.
I guess.
The commuter is outside.
Someone like there's like a dead body filming like their car horn outside.
Someone moved it.
There you go.
They had one final spasm. They're off their horn. Okay, good.
That used to happen more in movies. People would like die in cars and then go.
Yeah.
Now the car just explodes, even
Yeah.
if there's just a standard crash. Oh, explode,
No, that's something I learned from movies. If a car turns upside down,
explode.
it
Yeah.
always explodes.
Always.
There's a fire at the
car
top
gets
of the
shot at.
gas tank, and if it turns upside down,
All right. So our main event this week, our big double feature, is this got weird in a couple of different ways. I'm going to explain how. First off, usually when we do a poll every single week, and the winner of the poll is the quote unquote bad movie, allegedly bad movie that we review, and then we come up with a good movie to play as a double feature. And we sort of play them off of each other and illuminate them. This time we had a tie, so we're going to do one right after the other, so there's no new poll this week. Although we will put a posting up on Facebook on the Schmoville page to get more nominations for bad movies that we can put on the polls at some point in the near future, so you have something to do. So we have the first winner was Dirty Dancing Havana Nights.
which I think might have pulled ahead by like maybe one or two votes at the very end.
But it was tied for like almost a day.
Clearly,
and so we decided to just let him go.
Clearly, the second place was also passionately believed in by our listeners, so we're going to do that one.
So we'll do that one next week, and that one, of course, is Orca, the most notorious Jaws knockoff ever. But for Dirty Dancing Havana Nights, we decided that there was someone we had to bring in, of course, which was Miss Movies herself.
Obviously me.
Yeah, the greatest champion of dance movies in the world.
In the world.
In the
Definitely.
whole world.
No one else.
I like that on Twitter you backed away from that one ignoramus who said that all but dance movies were bad.
I just said,
I'm going to call him an ignoramus out on the show.
I'm not. I think that's rude.
I just said I have officially muted this conversation.
I think I didn't say he was dumb or bad. I said he was ignorant, which means he hasn't seen enough dance movies and hasn't realized the glory of it
Why
yet.
is everything so negative? Okay, I don't know. I just want everyone to be nice. But
we're doing Dirty Dancing Havana Nights.
yeah, but then
With
there was
the
some
wonderful Miss Movies.
and there was some confusion, and it was all my fault over our double feature.
Yes.
Bec-
How about I run this down?
You
How about
run that
I run
down,
this
Brianne.
down?
Okay.
Okay, so I get the assignment Dirty Dancing Havana Nights. I've never seen it, so I was like, all right, gonna do it. I was kind of not necessarily avoiding it. It came out in like 2005. I think I was just like getting my teaching credential, and I was just, didn't have time and was like, I'm not sure I'm gonna do that. And then there was how about Shall We Dance? The original. Quoted as the original.
The original.
Plus, it was also paired with we could do Top Hat or Shall We Dance. So I was like, okay, well, let's do Shall We Dance. I haven't seen that one, and I've never seen a Fred Astaire, Ginger Rogers movie. So I thought,
really?
Yes.
Okay.
So I thought I should pick that one. Why not? And then, so I watched the movie. I watched both movies. I watched the movie in the morning yesterday, which was Friday. I watched Shall We Dance, and I'm like, this is kind of interesting. We can discuss this a little further later. But then, at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, maybe, I get
late
a
afternoon,
text
early evening.
from William that says, I just want to make sure you watch the 1996 version. And I was like, the 1996 version? No. Like, I'm like, I don't know what we're talking about right now. I was like, let me see if I can... I said, well, I watched the original, because you said the original.
Yeah, because what happened was...
Well, the problem is, the 1996 film has been remade twice.
Well,
once?
It's been remade once.
No, it's been remade twice.
Okay,
Once
tell
in
us.
America and once in Egypt.
Oh, fair enough.
Both with the same title, same
Gotcha.
story, same characters.
All right. Problem is, what confused me, and the reason why it didn't even occur to me to consider the Fred Astaire or Ginger Rogers version, one, that movie isn't very good. It has some great sequences, but it's not a very good movie. But the other
That's why
thing
I was
was
confused.
The other thing was the Japanese film, the 1996 film that I really wanted to talk about, is not a remake of that. It's its own thing that just happens to be called Shall We Dance?
And in fact,
True.
That's where I got screwed up.
in fact, the movie is named after the song from The King and I.
Yes.
So
I love
none of
that.
us watched The King and I, right?
Actually,
no.
never seen The King and I.
Did not
Oh,
watch
yeah.
The King and I. Did do a novelty routine when I was a freshman in high school. We did The King and I, and I think we got first place. Yeah, we did.
Oh, nice.
We got
Okay.
first place at
Nicely
nationals.
done.
Yes, I was a warrior in that,
Okay.
so it was very exciting. Got to jump on a trampoline.
I would have thought you would be I.
No,
That's a shame.
it is a shame.
I did get to see The King and I at the Pantages with Marie
very
Osmond
exciting.
as Anna.
That's nice.
I forgot
cool.
who played the King.
What about Anna and the King? Did you watch?
I
it?
did see Anna and the
I have
King.
not seen Anna and the King.
Yeah, with
That's
Chow
the-
Yun Fat and Jodie Foster.
Jodie Foster.
The King and I with no songs. Why bother?
Yeah.
You know what I hate about musicals? Music.
So then the other part was finding the Shall We Dance 1996 version. That was the other hurdle I had to do. So I had to look in all the devices, and I was like, this is there nowhere to be found. And finally, someone put it on YouTube in 12 or 13 segments, 9 minutes each, 9 to 10 minutes each. And I was able to watch it that way. There was only one hiccup, and that was at about the seventh one of the series. There was no sound. There was maybe music at the beginning of it, and then there was no sound. There was still subtitles. It was 9 minutes of me just reading silently.
Luckily,
it worked out.
Luckily, it was a subtitled film, so you
Well,
could
that's what
not
I had
miss
to
any
do.
of
I
the
had to
dialogue.
find the one that was subtitled because there was also the version that wasn't subtitled. I was like, well, I could watch this.
Which I think is also longer. I think there's a different
No.
cut in Japan. Isn't
It's
there?
like 2 hours, 10 minutes, 2 hours, 20 minutes ish.
I-
Both of them were. I calculated.
Yeah,
it.
they're about the same. I was worried about that because you were going to do that. I think it would have been a great experiment in cinema, but you really need a lot of cultural context to understand the plot of Shall We Dance. So I'm really glad
It's
you're
very
able
true.
to track it down. Streaming is such a double-edged sword. It's really tragic because when it's convenient, it's the most convenient thing in the world. Problem is, if it's not convenient, the movie dies.
Yeah.
People can't find it anymore. We have shut down most
does.
local actual video stores. Most people, if they want to see something, they don't want to wait and have it delivered on Amazon if it's even available on home video anymore. So a movie like Shall We Dance, which is, I was introduced to it through my wife, Michelle. It's one of her favorite movies. We actually have a DVD. I had missed it in theaters. I remember it being one of those indie films of the 90s where like working class people got a hobby. That was like a big boom of that.
lot of those in the 1990s.
Yeah, like they're gonna do a nude calendar but it's Judi Dench and Helen Mirren. Interesting. Or they're gonna take up gardening. Isn't that fun? We're gonna be strippers.
We're gonna sell weed. That was my favorite one.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of those. That was like a big booming cottage indie comedy industry. And
they were
Shall
all
We
from-
Dance was
and
one of
they-
the more respectable ones.
And none of them were American. They were all from other countries.
Pretty much.
Typically
yeah.
from the Isles, but
Yes.
Shall We Dance fits the mold, even though it's from
Well,
Japan.
Do Full Monty for sure.
Full Monty Kosi. It's the one where the
Cosi Van Toot.
where the mental institution puts on an opera.
Kenneth Branagh's Winter's Tale, which is all
There you
Oh,
go.
dear.
a
Oh,
Winter's
dear.
Tale.
A production of
I like
Hamlet.
that.
That's a great movie, actually. People want to talk about that one.
Winter's Tale's crazy.
Yeah.
There's so much that happens.
It's called a Midwinter's Tale. The
You're
kind of
right.
kind of
I
film.
apologize.
Oh,
because the movie
so
is...
not-
And the original title was In the Bleak Midwinter, and it's about
okay.
a ragtag group of actors trying to put on a production of Hamlet in an actual castle and the drama
That's
therein.
different than what
Yeah,
I'm thinking.
I got the title wrong, and that's fine.
It's still a good movie.
You know what else is a good movie? I was hoping you knew you're a film critic.
I know a couple. I've seen one or two.
We should do this now that we've told everyone the convoluted backstory of this episode.
Yeah.
Let's actually do the double feature.
Let's do
So,
it.
Dirty Dancing Havana Nights is one of the many Dirty Dancing movies. There was Dirty Dancing, which was a really unexpected hit. People did not expect it to be huge and get Oscar nominated. Didn't it win Best Song?
I
at the
had the time
Oscars?
of my life.
Yeah.
I think it
that
did.
did win Best Song.
Yeah, and then it spawned a short-lived sitcom, which people don't remember, but eventually we'll review on our other podcast, Canceled Too Soon.
For sure.
You're welcome to join us for that if you want. The soundtrack was a huge hit, and then weirdly enough, it didn't spawn any sequels for a long time until they decided to basically take an unrelated dance movie and re-engineer it as a Dirty Dancing sequel
Right.
in 2004 called Dirty Dancing 2 Havana Nights.
And indeed, you could take off the Dirty Dancing part and cut out the Patrick Swayze scene,
Yes.
and it would not
You
be.
should.
You could just call it Havana Nights
Yeah.
and have just a generic dance film.
Because Patrick Swayze shows up in this movie. It's another movie about a young girl going to a different place, meeting a hunky, rebellious guy who dances all sexy-like, and having her ideas challenged.
Another rich white girl.
Yeah, they're very similar films.
Always. Gotta always be the rich white girl. That's always
And this
how it
one,
is.
she's blonde,
with the help,
too.
right? Because he's the
Dancing
help
with
in
the help.
in the original. So
Yeah.
there
And
you
the
go.
disapproving parents. The disapproving dad in this one is played by Dudemar from Mad Men.
Yes, John Slattery.
John Slattery.
and then
Mom
January
was played by
Jones.
Cela Ward.
Yes,
on.
and January Jones.
January
Jones.
Jones shows up as one of the
of the catty
racist,
girls, yeah.
catty peers at the country club / hotel.
And,
No.
well, they went to a school too together,
Yeah.
but that was one scene.
It's like one or two scenes and I just let
Are
it
you
go.
still going to school?
I'm not
or what's
exactly
happening?
sure what they're doing in Havana other than being rich there right before the revolution.
Right,
when it was
because
okay to be rich
Her
in
dad
Havana.
got a promotion or something. I don't know, but I don't know what.
Before
job he was
Castro
doing,
came to
so.
power in Cuba, I'm not an expert, which is the reason why we didn't do East Soy Cuba, which is our original idea.
I had so many great ideas for films on or around Cuban history. Like Tomasa Lea has made some really salient films about this exact period of history, but you kept on shooting me down.
I don't feel comfortable giving a history lesson about this. I just want to give everyone a quick primer. Because that's my thing. We only have I'm not an expert in this, and I don't want to speak out of turn and to find everyone telling me I'm wrong about the history of Cuba.
Okay.
But I do know this about the history of Cuba. Before Castro came to power, Americans were all over Cuba.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
It was a huge vacation destination because it was right off the coast. There were clubs, there were nightclubs, there were casinos, there were hotels. It was a big booming resort industry.
Batista was corrupt AF.
Yes. And then when Batista was ousted and Castro came to power, all of that got shut down and Cuba became a very different place.
Yeah.
And Dirty Dancing Havana Nights takes place basically that month.
Yes, when it happens.
And there's a lot of talk about the revolutionaries and how there are people protesting in the streets. I think we see it in one scene, and it's like the safest, nicest protest you've
They
ever seen.
might have been afraid to do it just because it wasn't filmed in anything that looked like Cuba.
I think it was filmed in Puerto Rico.
Yes.
I think it was filmed in Culver City.
Yeah. So the idea is they're setting this story of young love, of sexy dance, against a backdrop of political unrest, which leads to a very unusual climax, which we'll talk about in a bit. But this is kind of a remarkably straightforward movie. I'm watching this film, and it's basically just intelligent young woman goes to Havana, finds out everyone around her is a dick, gets attracted to Diego Luna because how could you not be?
Right.
He sexy dances. She dances, but does not sexy dance.
Yes,
and
but then
then
they teach each other.
They teach each other the dance moves, and
Yes.
together they interweave.
They blend it.
And then they're going to take on a huge dance competition. And I'm watching this, and I'm like, this is formulaic. It's really not that bad.
Well, it's not that it's bad. It's just that it's boring. It doesn't do anything with any of this. I feel like I've seen this film 100 other times before and since.
What I didn't understand about this film is the fact that the dance moves and the music are modern.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that really threw me off because the original Dirty Dancing, which takes place in the 60s, was very much to the time.
The one
Except
exception
for-
is the theme song.
As I've had the time of my
Sure.
life.
Yeah, that was
But
always
everything
weird.
else, was...
Because that was
So I just thought...
Well, and even the dress and the
tone.
makeup, it felt like a modern stage production of something that was taking place in the 50s. There was no authenticity. It's shot and lit like really, really brightly as if it's like on a sitcom set.
It's attractively shot. They made a choice. I think it looks good. There's a lot of shots of them like dancing together,
It doesn't
and they're
look like the real world. There's
but they made
there's
that
no
choice.
attempt at authenticity.
and I think that would have been fine if they hadn't gone to all the effort of setting it against the backdrop of revolution in Cuba.
Exactly.
Like you can romanticize, teen love all you want, and they have lots of lovely shots of them practicing dancing together and like seen through translucent sheets for some reason as they like watch old home movies of her parents dancing
was
together,
it?
and then they start dancing together just like her parents, and they start making out with her parents on the background, and I'm just sort of like, this is an odd fetish. and then they get interrupted and it's awkward. But it's
the girl from Sleepover is in it.
Okay.
The younger sister. It's the girl from that movie Sleepover.
I didn't see Sleepover.
I did.
I feel like I saw that too. Was this? Wait, when was that?
Sleepover. This was like 2004.
Okay.
I think.
Yep. I definitely have seen this movie.
Sleepover is. I have a rather shameful story which involves the phrase "one adult for sleepover, please." When a lot of moms are taking their 8 to 10-year-old girls into this movie in a big long line, and I'm the one adult male.
Let's not sit near him.
Without kids, no less.
People were actually looking at me and moving away from me when I saw Sleepover
It makes sense.
in theaters.
It makes sense.
Come on, I'm a spine critic. I got to see this for work. yeah, that's why I have to see Sleepover at 9 p.m. on a Wednesday. It was an embarrassing experience. So anything that reminds me of that, I got to bring it up.
I had a one for Mother's Day I had to do as well, which was also rather just sort of, I am sad.
One please for Mother's Day.
Don't even have my mom with me. This sucks.
I don't know what the equivalent to mine would be, so...
You're fine.
One for Magic Mike? I mean, I
That's
guess.
fine. That's great.
That works.
That's what you should be doing.
Okay.
I was maybe one of 3 males in the theater for Magic Mike XXL, and a sold-out theater. It was all women.
Was it amazing? Was it an experience?
It was amazing.
Were you
it
at
was
church?
Overwhelming. I was... I felt threatened by the estrogen that was pouring all over my body in that room.
Oh my gosh. Love Magic Mike. Both.
Good times. Magic Mike, a better dance movie than Dirty Dancing.
Yes.
Event. The Dirty Dancing itself is a weird film to watch today. I would be fascinated to find out what someone watching Dirty Dancing for the first time would make
You're talking
of
about
it.
the original.
The original Dirty Dancing. It's an odd film because we think
I'll
of
let
it
you
as,
know because I haven't seen it.
It's you watched. That's right. He watched the TV remake. And
that's
before
a
he saw
problem.
the original.
Well,
I've
you
seen
know
the
what?
TV remake
It
and-
only goes up from here.
That's true.
I've seen the TV remake, which was
really-
just
no, that was a bad
embarrassingly
choice.
bad, and now I've seen the sequel, but I still haven't seen the original.
Okay.
All right. What everyone,
It's very good.
I think what everyone remembers about Dirty Dancing are the big brush strokes. Young woman goes off on vacation with her family, ends up spending more time with the help who have more interesting lives and who sexy dance, whereas everyone else not sexy
Yes.
dances. And she ends up doing a dance routine with Patrick Swayze, who was in his prime, and it's romantic and it is sexy.
Yes,
and
but
then
you
your parents,
don't remember.
What you don't remember is
The
how fucked up it
abortion.
is.
The abortion
You don't
subplot.
remember.
yeah.
The whole abortion subplot. It's really dark.
Which makes sense because I saw Dirty Dancing for the first time when I was maybe 7 or 8.
Yeah.
And my older sister, who's 4 years older than me, was very upset with my mom. She was like, how come she gets to see it and I don't get to see it? And she was like, because she's not going to understand it. And I was like, okay. So now I get, later when I saw it, I was like, now I understand. I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know what was wrong with this woman, nor
She's
did I.
sick, but you don't.
There's a problem. She has a problem. I don't know what it is. I don't know what why she can't
consequences
dance.
of it,
Obviously,
Yeah, something. Is
yeah, you don't remember that.
Yeah, it's really an unusual film. But what that subplot does do to Dirty Dancing is it lends what could have been a very trite young love story a lot of gravitas, a lot
It
of
does.
really big emotional heft. And it creates
And then-
a rift between her and her father.
Yes,
and
and then
everything.
his turn as well towards the end, where
Yeah.
it's like finding out about what really happened.
Yeah.
And then he's just like, oh, he has that epiphany.
And honestly, it's tricky because you can't really, based on the information he's got, and Patrick Swayze totally just falls on his sword for this. And he just says, yeah, it was me. We can't blame the rich kid who's obviously responsible. I'll just say it was me. Jerry Orbach does the best he can with the information he's got.
Yeah,
It's a
he
tragic
does.
situation on a variety of levels, and it's all kind of based off of pretty decent character development. People make bad decisions all the time. It led to good drama. It's an effective movie. It's kind of a weird movie. It's a very effective movie. Dirty Dancing Havana Nights, even though it has the backdrop of revolution, has none of that. It feels really frothy. Just really empty and light for so much of it. It's just, we're going to sexy dance. There's one scene where
And
the young...
it's not even incredibly sexy. It's a PG-13 rated film. Actual sex and sweat and flesh don't come into this at all.
Oh, they have sex. They do.
They have sex.
We get a
but
topless
it's-
Diego Luna.
Fine.
Okay.
And to display her sexuality, it's like, oh, we're going to put her in a dress. She has breasts. Good God!
Run!
Run for the hills, a white woman has breasts.
The protagonist is played by Romola Garai, an actor who's fine, but she hasn't broken out since then. She has a lot of TV, apparently.
And she looks the square. You know, she has that sort of, she's very good at that sort of schoolgirl look. They dress her in these really sort of prim schoolgirl outfits. I don't believe that she is feeling any sort of passion in any scene in this movie.
No, she's constantly like looking at these people dancing in Cuba, and she's supposed to be like, oh, I am so inspired. I want a sexy dance. But it always just seems sort of like,
That's interesting.
Neat. Like, that's all I get from her.
And indeed, that reaction makes this film smack a lot of, like, wealthy white privilege. It's like, I think I want to try what the locals are doing.
Yeah.
But she always has this cushion. She can just go back to her mansion. It doesn't matter whose life she's
she lives at a hotel, right? Is that where
she
they live?
literally lives at
in
a
a
hotel. But there's a scene where...
this is essentially a movie about how fun it is to slum with the locals.
They literally do slum with the locals. There's a part early on where she goes to a party with the rich white dude who's like her father's boss's son.
Yes.
And it's okay, but it's kind of lame. And she wants to go to this cool club she heard about from Diego Luna, who was one of the waiters at the hotel. And they end up going to the club, and they're the two rich white people they're literally slumming. And it's awkward. And then as soon as they're about to leave, he basically attacks her in a car.
Yes.
And he tries to rip off her dress, and then she runs off.
This is too real right now.
And
This is too real.
God. That never really comes to fruition.
No,
there's no consequence for that kid.
The consequence is that he's out of the picture and he's no longer a viable romantic interest.
Well,
good,
for the viewer.
But they
yes.
do for the viewer. They do that so early in the film. Like, there's no moment where she's torn between these two guys. She clearly has no interest in the white guy.
It's kind of a foregone conclusion. A lot of this.
So they're just sort of putting the cherry on the sundae of this man being undesirable. He could just be boring. I don't want to spend time with you. You're a boring guy.
I think the one thing that I did obviously connect with her on is like her decision to not say anything to her parents to to make it so that way nothing about her dad's job was in jeopardy because of what this guy did to her. And I was like, gosh, that sucks, because that is so real. Like, I didn't tell my husband about being sexually harassed like until the day that I finally had to tell everyone that I was.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, this is great. Anyways, to bring it back.
It's such a cheap plot point in so many movies.
It is, and it's sad because you can be a horrible person and we can not like a character without having to go that route. And that's what's frustrating.
That screenwriters feel that they so often have to rely on sexual assault.
Because it's the easy way out.
It is.
It's the easy way to show a villain.
It's cheap drama.
It's like how do you want to have? It's just like cancer. In real life, cancer is one of the greatest tragedies of all. In a movie,
it's a cheap plot point.
It feels cheap 98% of the time. It feels like a thing you throw into the last act so you can have a couple of emotional speeches and say goodbye to someone and move on. It's usually it yields a lot of hack writing, which is a damn shame. And there's a lot of exceptions. Don't bother putting them in the comments.
That's why with specifically Lady Bird and Edge of 17, I was like, I like Lady Bird better because it didn't hinge on a tragic event as Edge of 17 did. So I felt like that, a lot of weight was put on that. So I'm like, that's kind of why I liked this one better, because it didn't have to do that.
Yeah, fair enough.
As an example.
I liked Edge of 17 because the tragic event was so long ago that she had reached a point in her life where she wasn't allowed to fall back on it anymore.
Right.
So I thought that
because he was like, you know
clever.
what? If it were 1 or 2 years, maybe, but you're kind of out of that now.
Yeah. You're okay now.
We've moved on.
And movie cancer is always like what Roger Ebert called Ally McGraw disease, where
you always look fabulous until the moment you die.
Yeah, you have this horrible, debilitating disease that's wasting you away, but nobody ever looks bad. Like, they might get dark circles under their eyes, and that's it.
They might look a little pasty.
A little bit.
Yeah, that's about all you got.
And they're gonna cough a lot, and that's as bad as it gets. Like, you with a mild cold is movie cancer.
Yeah. No, we don't have that in Dirty Dancing Havana Nights.
Wouldn't have been surprised.
We have an undercurrent of racism, because obviously it's the 50s. She is romantically entangling herself with a Cuban boy, and when they finally enter the big dance competition, her parents decide to go at the last minute, and rather than have some big plot point and say we're going to call this all off, she says, "Fuck it, we're doing this," and then they just show off and they kiss in front of everybody.
That is a little bizarre. I
It
feel
was
like maybe
super melodramatic.
if you're gonna do the dance, don't do the kiss.
Yeah.
Like, as a kid, I'd be like, well, my parents are here.
Yeah.
I'm still doing this dance, I guess.
And then their parents find out about it, and there's a huge fight, and it all boils down to one last big dance. There's going to be one more big dance, and then the movie gets weird.
Okay, so wait, before the movie gets weird, I do want to say, weren't her parents going to enter the competition as well? And
They talked about it.
yeah, and I
Like,
would
they
have
have-
liked to see that. Like, let's have them dance first in the classical
Her
section.
parents are the bad guy dancers.
Maybe.
What if the
or what if they were together? Like, we're all on the dance floor together.
that would be
Like,
nice.
come on, guys. Why couldn't we have done
with it?
this?
Because there's
They
a
missed
whole
an
subplot about her
opportunity.
parents being dancers.
Yes,
It just doesn't really go anywhere.
it doesn't, which is unfortunate.
So we get to the final like big dance number, and this is the scene in every dance movie. There's a big dance off. There's a moment of
so
self-doubt, and they're gonna have a huge dance, and it's gonna be great. And everyone in the audience is gonna be like, "Yeah!" And then while they're dancing, everything is going on. Diego Luna's brother and a whole bunch of his friends show up as waiters, pull out guns, and they're going to do a political assassination right there because all of the most important people in Cuba are in the room. Sergio, shh.
And strangely enough, that's sort of like a yay moment in the movie.
Yeah.
When the revolution's finally coming down. Yay! Batista's out.
Yeah,
Yay!
literally minutes after the failed assassination attempt, the revolution went down anyway. So it was
Yeah.
all pointless. And on top of it all being pointless, the whole assassination attempt, the dance competition didn't properly end, so no one won.
Right.
He didn't get the money that he was going to use to move
No
to
one
America.
got the money.
So then the revolution goes down. Everyone's like, yay, Castro's in power. There's no way this is going to go bad. And then they have sex. Not the protagonist, not everyone in Cuba. And then
Good clarification.
Oh, okay.
and then
I mean, I'm sure there was a lot.
I'm
going
sure
on.
there was. And then Diego Luna
Cuba-wide orgy.
and Diego Luna and Romola Garay,
a different movie.
they have sex and they have this long conversation about how, now all you people should leave. Castro said he's going to kick y'all out. She's like, well, maybe he won't. Yeah, he probably will. Everything's going to be fine now. I'm just going to stay here with Revolution. Well, what if it sucks? I don't know, probably won't. And that's the end. And I'm like, oh, I feel like we need like a title scroll. Plenty that some shit did go down in Cuba.
Castro was in power until his death in X year, and it's just
it's
something.
kind of a. Well, I don't think he was dead by the time the movie
guess.
came out. But still, it feels like there's sort of just and it got complicated. Maybe it would have been nice to add because it's really romantic. They really just kind of dropped the ball on any sort of just the revolution had problems too.
We should have sex now because you're probably gonna have to leave.
Yeah.
That's
You
what's
should
gonna-
go now.
You're gonna need to go.
Let's do it really quick. I got a car right over there. It's got bench seats, and then we can just get the hell out of Cuba, go to Florida.
Where were they though?
With
They were
all
on the
all of the
beach
rich
in some
people.
teepee or something.
Yeah,
I don't know where
they're
they
in
were.
the sex tent.
Oh, that's what it was.
Havana has sex tents.
It
for
was the
rent.
most
I didn't know.
intense sexual experience of their lives.
I'm gonna hit you so hard
I
after the show.
understand.
I'm gonna remember that one.
Dirty Dancing Havana Nights is. I see this on lists of the worst sequels ever. Mm-hmm. It's not. It's just not a very good movie.
It's just not a very good movie. I feel like it shouldn't have been titled Dirty Dancing like we kind of talked before.
Yeah, Havana Nights would have been fine.
Because it doesn't make sense to have, in my opinion, to have Patrick Swayze there in general. Like, if you're going to have it be that name, but you're also going to use this character, like, you're going to use him, and we all know him from the first one, but you would...
But it's a prequel.
Exactly,
It's
that's
super
why it
confusing.
doesn't work.
We didn't even talk about this. So there's a couple of scenes where there's dance classes at the hotel.
Why?
I think it's because that's the only way they could get Patrick Swayze in there. Patrick Swayze is available, but he can only be here for 2 days.
Yes.
So we need to do all of his scenes in one room where he teaches Romola Garay a little bit about loosening up.
Yeah.
And that's literally it. There's one scene where he watches her dance in one shot, and it looks it's pretty bad. And he at this point Patrick Swayze is in his 50s, I think.
Yeah.
But the implication is that he's playing Johnny Castle. And Johnny Castle would have been younger than he was in Dirty Dancing over the course of this film.
So we needed some good CG there.
Something.
like
It's
Star
super awkward.
Wars.
he shouldn't have been in it at all. Like,
No,
it doesn't really add anything.
No, it doesn't. You know who else
he's
is in
charismatic,
it?
but like...
Is the woman in Dirty Dancing who is the, like, one that seduces the guy. The, like, older woman who's supposed to be married, but her husband doesn't come up till on weekends. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do.
She's also in this film.
Is she? I missed that.
She's one of the dancers in his...
I like to think it's the same character.
Probably is.
They probably didn't put them in there by chance.
They call her the Bungalow Bunny, is what they
it's
what they
her
name
credit.
them. That's
Okay.
what they name them. Although, no, I don't know I forget what her character's name is. I should know because I pretty much know Dirty Dancing better than, like, any movie, but forgotten it. Lillian Ward. There you go.
go.
Got
Okay.
it. There it is.
The title screen of this movie is Dirty Dancing, Havana Nights, based on a true story.
Yes.
I had to look
So
that
you
up.
looked that up. Yeah,
because
it's
Dirty Dancing
very
Havana
loose.
Nights is not based on a true story, but it turns out it is.
Dirty
it turns
Dancing
out a
was based
reporter...
on a true story as well.
Yeah,
so that's
but-
probably why
yeah.
they wanted to do
Both films are based off of the coming-of-age experiences of
Yes.
one of the writers.
Yeah,
Correct.
so one of the writers wrote a book about how she was a teenager in Cuba at that time and sort of what it was like to come of age in Cuba at the time. Nothing to do with Dirty
Dancing at all?
or
Okay.
you know,
Oh, wow.
some to do with romance. It was optioned for being made into a film many, many years ago.
Like 1992.
Yeah, like in the 90s. I think
From the producer of Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction.
Lawrence Bender wanted to make it into a movie, so it was optioned a long time ago, and just through the long, complicated bowel that is Hollywood, it eventually kind of mutated into a dirty... Like, it was eventually repurposed as a Dirty Dancing sequel, kind of at the last minute.
So not even a dancer.
So-
what you're telling me.
Even though it's... Like, long ago in its history, it was based on a true story, they still were able to use it as a selling point.
It's always weird for me when that happens, when you can really track the origin of something and watch it mutate into something completely different.
Kind of like The Greatest Showman.
There you go.
Oh, is that not
Which
supposed to be a big musical?
No, it's supposed to be P.T. Barnum,
Oh,
right? But it's
yeah,
really
yeah.
not. I mean, there's basics. Like, yeah, he made that P.T. Barnum's Museum, American Museum.
Yeah.
He took Jenny Lind on tour. His thing burned down. That's pretty much it. Just those things are pretty much true to him. Nothing else.
Well, honestly, the one I keep thinking of is there is a Jet Li movie called Cradle to the Grave, which is about conflict, diamonds, and a whole bunch of stuff. It started off as a contemporary remake of Fritz Lang's M. Fritz Lang's M, if you haven't seen it, it's obviously a Saturday double feature. It is a great movie.
Can we talk about Fritz Lang's M?
Real
I love
fast,
that
we're
movie.
going
Yeah.
to. Fritz Lang's M stars Peter Lorre as a serial killer who murders children. And all of Germany is out looking for
Just
this
pull
guy.
the candy out of the bowl.
It
It's
just
all right.
didn't want to do it so loud.
It's fine. You have a candy bowl, it's what it's here for. Peter Lorre is a serial killer. He kills children. Everyone in Germany is out looking for this guy. The police are on such high alert that even all of the criminal underworld is being affected as well. So all the criminals organize a manhunt for the serial killer too, and it's about that sort of line of morality where what can we all agree is evil. And it's great. It's a brilliant fucking movie. And I can kind of see how you might want to do a movie about how cops and criminals teaming up to catch a bad guy everyone can agree is fucking awful, and somehow it turned into conflict diamonds. Conflict diamonds are bad, and they are, but it's not the same.
And you can start seeing how the logic starts to mutate. It's like, okay, well, we already have M, so we don't want to do that same story. We don't want to do a child murderer, so we'll do, I don't know, what else is bad? Come on, let's hear it, guys. Hear it around the table. There's a bunch of people around my executive table.
Destroying the ozone layer.
It's been done. It's too old. It's not hot anymore. What
Fixing the ozone layer.
That's imposimple, dude. Wailing was made illegal in 1987. We can't do that anymore.
Okay, diamonds.
Good diamonds, like conflict diamonds, right?
Yeah, we'll add conflict. We'll add conflict to the plot.
Conflict is in the word. I love it. Okay, start writing the screenplay. Get it on my desk by Friday.
Cradle to the grave.
Cradle to the grave. Who do we got? Jet Li, fine.
So anyway, we had a lot of options for a double feature for Dirty Dancing Havana Nights, and what we decided to do, since we had a guest, was Witney came up with one, I came up with one, and we gave it to our guest to choose. And it all got screwed up, as we've already described.
It did. So you chose Top Hat, Whitney.
I chose Top Hat.
Okay.
Yeah, which is a great Ginger Rogers first.
I chose a bunch of Cuban movies first, but William didn't want to do those.
Yeah. And then we thought about, we accidentally all kind of watched Shall We Dance with Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers, it's not a good film. It's got great numbers.
I was
the plot is
confused
bad.
as to why I was watching it.
Okay.
Mainly because I was like, there's this scene where oh my gosh, there's so many, like, he's so creepy.
Yeah, he's a stalker.
He pretends that they're married, and then everyone thinks they're married, and then they have to really get married so they can get divorced, so people will be like,
stop complaining that they're
done.
Yeah. Like, yeah.
But then he, like, makes a mannequin of her to, like, make it look like he's with her, and then he has everyone wear these, like, faces during this number. The faces are of her. I'm like, and how, when you see that as Ginger Rogers, aren't you like, get me out of here? What the F is this guy doing?
Especially when
she's like, oh, this is charming.
Especially when the plot kicks off with her not wanting to deal with creepy dancers anymore.
Yes.
It's
and
such
then
a
it
weird
shows up with this accent, and then it's like, then the accent is gone? Like, I don't... And she's like, what are you doing, Peter Peters? Is his name Peter Peters? I swear it is.
I just want to say, I really apologize for that.
The plots, you look at the plot of any Astaire Rogers musical, they're all pretty dumb, convoluted, not very well thought out. They're not even bare bones. They're like marrow that you just put the dance numbers
how
on.
a lot of original movie musicals worked out if they weren't adapted from Broadway. A lot of the times they just had a bunch of numbers and then they worked the plot around them.
Yeah,
hell, that's how Singing in the Rain happened.
So anything goes. Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah, well, Gershwin had, like, some songs in here that I was like, oh, I sang that in middle school.
Yeah, they're famous songs. You know, you say tomato, I say tomatoes. And yeah. Great.
Let's call the whole thing off.
It's a fantastic number, and they're roller skating around. But, like, it has nothing to fucking do with Dirty Dancing Havana Nights. The film I wanted to do is Shall We Answer 1996.
Yes.
Which is a fantastic motion picture directed by Masayuki Suo. And it is... Whereas a lot of the dance movies that we see now are typically about young people. It's about youthful expression. It's about passion. Shall We Dance is about a middle-aged family man who... His life
never sees his family because he's always working.
Yeah, he's not. His life isn't terrible. His wife loves him, but they live in a very conservative society. In fact, at the beginning, there's an opening scroll or opening monologue where it's just mentioned that in Japanese culture, no matter how much you love your wife, you don't really express it very much. And as a result, something like ballroom dancing, which is physical contact, very intimate, very public, is looked upon with a lot of suspicion. It's just not part of the culture, and people who embark upon that are seen as kind of weird. And so when he, on his way home from work every day on the train, sees a dance studio and a young woman staring out the window looking as lost as he is, he's intrigued, and he decides to secretly, without telling his wife, mostly because he's embarrassed, decides to take ballroom dancing lessons. And it's charming as fuck.
It certainly is. I do love that he has, like, this coworker. Like, at the very beginning, I was like, oh, that coworker's dancing too.
Yeah.
Because, like, of the way he, like, turns, it's like a very sharp turn.
As he walks past every cubicle and turns to the right, he does this massive pivot. And later on, when he finds out that this guy is also a ballroom dancer, the guy is just like, yeah, no, I know, I hide it really well at work. And the guy's just like,
yeah, not really.
What I appreciate is that Shall We Dance is very much about the process of learning how to dance and finding your passion within learning the steps and actually accepting a new skill and new experiences into your life. Dirty Dancing Havana Nights, in contrast, is about just feeling it.
Yeah.
And it's a conceit in dance movies I've always kind of loathed. It's like, I can't get the steps right. Just close your eyes and let it come out of your heart. So I know the steps now? No, this is a complicated thing. We got to keep on doing the technicals.
A lot of dance movies skip the part where people literally learn to dance for the first time.
Yes, and this does not.
The implication is that they've learned the basics of dancing, and now they need to learn how, now that all of that is ingrained in them subconsciously, now they can use what they've known just sort of naturally to express themselves in original ways.
And normally they would probably make that a montage as well. Whereas this is like, no, we're going, you're coming with us every day to learn this.
Now you have to go a couple extra hours. Oh, God. Carve time out of my day to go like 2 extra hours to my dance class.
And one of the things I love about Shall We Dance is he never gets great. Like, he's good. Right, yeah, he learns the steps eventually.
He just learns how to do it. He doesn't become a champion.
Yeah, and that's not the whole point of it. It does lead up to a bit of a dance competition, but that's not the point. The movie keeps going for like 25 minutes afterwards because we haven't actually wrapped up the story.
Right.
The dancing is a mechanism through which we tell a story, much like the plot is. I think there's this sort of... you see this in a lot of sports movies. Sports movies are just like dance movies. The plot just happens to revolve around this thing.
Right.
But ultimately, it's about characters and how they express themselves through the thing that they do. Rocky is not about boxing. It's about a guy who, through boxing, learns his own self-worth and decides to really give a go at his life. Shall We Dance is about dancing, but it's mostly about someone who realizes that they have a lot of nice things in their life, but they don't have art. And they don't have some beautiful way to express themselves. They don't have a passion. They don't have a pastime. They don't have a hobby. That's all we need. And that's what it's really about. And it is so goddamned cute. It's so cute. Like all these constant scenes where he's not... It's so hard once you know how to do something to fake that you don't. You know? Like if you know how to sing, singing badly hurts you. Like it's hard to do naturally.
Yeah, you have to practice.
Yeah. By the time you make a movie about dancing, you've probably learned some dancing. So like all of these early scenes where he doesn't know how to dance, he's really convincing. Like I really buy it, and I think it's a really nice bit of acting.
He's a tall, kind of gangly guy who he doesn't have the sort of musculature of a dancer going in, which is actually a big grievous sin of a lot of dance movies, even like Astaire Rogers films. Like Fred Astaire has played a guy who doesn't know how to dance. Right, you look like a dancer. You look like you dance like 18 hours a day.
Fred Astaire has just a punchable face. I cannot get over it.
I think he's got a charming smile. I know he's got a weird shaped head, but you know.
The problem with Fred Astaire in a lot of those early movies in particular, he's always playing a mischievous scamp, which you could get away with a lot more in the 30s.
He looks like a mischievous scamp.
Right, but like nowadays, that's the kind of person you don't want around.
Yes.
I have
out of here, Fred Astaire.
I think one of my favorite Fred Astaire ones is actually
dance over there.
When he's actually playing more of a supporting role in this movie called Roberta, which also has Ginger Rogers, but he's not really the protagonist, so he gets away with it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Like it's the sort of thing where it's like he's great, but sometimes he's just asked to be a total cad, and we're supposed to accept it because 30s and Fred Astaire.
Well, and also he starts dancing, and you really don't care because you're just there for the dancing.
He's a great dancer.
He's the greatest dancer ever.
And so is Ginger Rogers, and she's fantastic. But you know, those early movies though, they just kind of cobbled together. What Shall We Dance does is it creates this really beautiful character arc. And it is as satisfying as any dance movie. Again, even though the dancing is like Strictly Ballroom is more spectacular ballroom dancing. Hell, either Dirty Dancing is technically has cooler dance moves in it. And yet I felt something so just enchanted and so relaxing and relieved, and I thought maybe everything's going to be okay, man. Maybe we're going to go about our lives and find little ways to express ourselves, and that's all that really matters. Man, I'm just going to go to bed pretty content, man. It's pretty great. I don't know. I don't know. Is it?
I like that they have the subplot of the wife and her being
the
concerned, getting the private detective. I thought that was pretty. And then he comes back and is like, "Nope."
I know.
And she's like, "What do you mean? Here's my findings. He's not cheating on you.
Yeah,
he's taking dance classes.
What? He doesn't come home more than usual. She thinks he's cheating on him, and the guy's just like, he's fine. Yeah. He's just taking dance classes. And then the private detective starts going to the dance recitals just because he likes them.
Yeah, see those cute things.
And he's actually responsible for making sure his wife and daughter find out about his big dance thing, so it'll be nice. It backfires horribly, but he meant well. It's really cute, and I kind of like the idea of we see so many private detective stories where it's really grizzled or really creepy or even erotic, and it's all this horrible stuff happens. It's just no, it's actually really sweet this time. I like this case. This is great. I have so much infidelity, and this guy's just dancing up a storm. He's nice. I talked to him. It was really cool.
The Relieved Detective, the movie. And it turns out they were running apple juice that whole time.
Shall We Dance, the other reason I really wanted to highlight Shall We Dance is specifically because when it came out in the 90s, it was celebrated. It got a lot of acclaim. The DVD's right here. It's covered in quotes from critics.
It did well enough to warrant several remakes.
There's a Richard Gere movie, which I heard was okay, but when you take it out of context, it doesn't really work. It kind of needs to be in Japan.
It does, because there's really no... Okay, I remember seeing the movie. I saw it. but I don't remember it. Does that make sense? I remember seeing it, but I don't remember the movie.
It's unremarkable.
It's
This is the Richard Gere
unremarkable.
film.
Yes,
Yeah, it's the
and
Dirty Dancing Havana Nights of Shall We Dance.
it's not going to have this whole shame factor to it and trying to hide that. Like, why would it matter if you're trying to hide that, in 2004? Like,
Yeah.
In America.
No one's gonna give a
Everyone's
crap.
going to Arthur Miller at this time. Like, come on.
The swing revival already died, guys. We're well past this.
Yeah, it's not going to have that same oomph. But this movie was, again, it came out, people admired it, and then no one talks about it. It's gone. It's liked, but no one talks about it. It's hard to find. It's on, you can still get it on DVD. It's not readily available on streaming services. You'd think this would be the sort of thing that would be on Filmstruck, at least. It is not.
I think...
At least I don't think so.
I think because when it came out in, we talked about it, in this like cloud of Miramax produced indies that were all about...
Or Miramax distributed indies.
Miramax distributed
an
indies.
acquisition.
About sort of working class people finding art in their lives or trying something new and crazy, and all of the films had a pretty similar impact along with this one, and that this one is maybe only a little bit better than a lot of those, perhaps has it forgotten. The entire when the entire genre is pushed aside, so is this film. It's not remarkable enough to stay amidst the others.
I think
people don't talk about the Full Monty too much anymore.
That's a perfectly good movie.
Now that the movie or the musical is gone, it's just not in the consciousness.
The Full Monty is still
Full Monty is just as good as Shall We Dance.
I would argue Shall We Dance is a little bit more refined, but those are both good movies. And there's a scene in Full Monty.
It's less crass, that's for sure.
There's a scene in Full Monty that makes me cry every time. It's when Mark Addy decides not to go to the strip to the strip club, and his wife finally finds out everything that's going on, and Mark Addy's like, well, who wants to see a fat guy strip? And she's like, I do. And speaking as a fat guy, I'm like, that's lovely. That's really nice. I think we're overdue to sort of reanalyze the 90s. We've been talking about the 80s for so goddamn long, and it was an interesting decade for cinema, don't get me wrong. The 90s was this bizarre hotbed where, honestly, a lot of the blockbusters just fade away. When was the last time you heard someone talk about Eraser? No one cares.
I mean, I talk about Cliffhanger all the time.
There's some good ones. There's some good ones.
Again,
Cliffhanger is great.
Cliffhanger is not it's no Star Wars. People aren't talking in a larger conversation. People aren't talking about.
But how much money Sylvester Stallone paid so people wouldn't have to see a rabbit get shot is amazing.
Bless him.
He had to reshoot it. He paid for it himself, people.
One of the biggest blockbusters of the 90s was Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. When was the last time you heard someone talk about that casually in conversation? Except maybe when Alan Rickman died because he stole the whole movie.
Men in Tights is the only one that I ever really hear about.
Right? Exactly. And I watched that movie. Like, if you ignore Kevin Costner's horrible accent, it's a fun action movie.
I don't think I've seen any Robin Hood aside from Men in Tights.
Really?
I really don't think I have.
You should see the Errol Flynn.
The Errol Flynn one's great.
At least see the Adventures of Robin Hood from 38. I think Claude Rains plays the bad guy,
and I'll put it back from the Disney one.
And Errol Flynn,
the Disney one's really fun,
super sexy.
With the Fox, the Disney one's really
I have seen the animated, yes, but so long ago that I'd be like, what?
But yeah, the blockbusters of the 90s, that's the kind of when special effects started moving towards CGI, and they were trying to unbind a lot of special effects, so there was a lot of you had your Jurassic Parks on one hand, but then you had your Mortal Kombats on the other. And the big hits are very dated, and people don't look back at them with fondness, even though they were loved at the time. Like Independence Day was a huge hit, and now it's like this go-to, that's terrible.
Well,
all of the 90s sucked.
Well, the sequel / reboot, no one gave a shit about.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is the 90s, some of the blockbusters, a lot of the blockbusters weren't. Nowadays, you look at the blockbusters, they're almost all reboots, remakes, sequels, really banking on pre-existing properties. A lot of the top-grossing films of the 90s were originals.
Mrs. Doubtfire.
Mrs. Doubtfire. Yeah. Titanic, was the story had been told before, but it wasn't a franchise.
Romeo + Juliet.
There you go. Forrest Gump is the fifth highest-grossing film of the 90s, I think, at least domestically. The Sixth Sense... Men in Black, the original, was a weird, quirky film. I was always surprised it did so well. Ghost was so fucking huge in the 90s. That's Saving Private Ryan. These are odd films that probably wouldn't be the top grossing films of their year now. But what we had...
And thanks to the indie boom, we had these weird sort of unexpected hits. Stuff like Phenomenon and Pulp Fiction were kind of leaking into the sides.
I think Phenomenon was a smaller scale studio release.
I guess it was just
Phenomenon's
I guess it was just
Phenomenon's
a sleeper,
maybe not
yeah.
the ideal film to pick in this scenario, but there's
not.
but
I was trying to think of it.
I mean,
like
is
a
American
sleeper
Beauty
hit, but
independent? Or
it was
is it...
not. That was a
No.
DreamWorks film. That was the first DreamWorks film to win Best Picture. We had films like Boys in the Hood. We had films like Clerks. We had films. Steven Soderbergh was going strong this whole time. Even though Sex, Lies, and Videotape, I think it was 89. I want to say 89.
It's 88 or 89.
Yeah, so it didn't quite hit the 90s there. But we had all these like young voices that were just sort of coming out of nowhere. Like I remember that brief moment where we all thought Ed Burns was going to be the next big filmmaker because the Brothers McMullen was pretty good, and then he realized he kept making the Brothers McMullen over and over again, and we kind of lost interest.
Put the kibosh on that pretty
Yeah,
quick.
we're kind of done. We had one Brothers McMullen. We're good. Even Kevin Smith started doing things slightly differently after a couple of films. Like, time to move on. Ed Burns. I don't know why I'm picking on Ed Burns so much. He seems fine. He seems fine. I don't know.
Fine enough.
Tom Petty did a good soundtrack for She's the One. I don't know.
You remember Schizopolis?
I do remember Schizopolis. Schizopolis is
one of my
fucking awesome.
favorite movies of the 90s. I love Schizopolis.
Have you seen Schizopolis?
No, don't know anything about it.
It's exactly what it sounds like. It's schizophrenic. It's just Steven Soderbergh just doing weird stuff. That's it.
Like he plays multiple characters and they don't speak English in certain scenes. They speak like the subtext of the scene rather than the dialogue, and then they turn around and do the same scene again where only one character,
think I
where
can
they're both
handle
speaking
this.
the text, but now one character is dubbed in Japanese. It's just this completely bizarre, like experimental art comedy that Steven Soderbergh put together.
There's this one point where the movie
mid-90s.
literally just stops and a guy comes up to a podium and just says, we just needed to comment and put all of the rumors and all of the hearsay and all of the lies to rest. A racehorse does not piss with any greater force or frequency than any other horse. Thank you. We resume the movie. It's a weird fucking film.
Sounds like it would be a Mel Brooks.
It's like
Vehicle.
Mel Brooks if he didn't feel the need to even like pretend there was a plot. Like, yeah, it's pretty great.
So the end of Blazing Saddles, just the whole film.
Kinda.
More or less.
It's not a musical, but yeah, that's basically it. Super weird. We got off track. This was fun.
We're talking about the boom of the 90s and how Shall
Yeah.
We Dance sort of came up out of a very specific time.
And I just think, I think a lot of people look upon that 90s independent wave as sort of this halcyon era where a lot of smaller movies, dramas, comedies, movies about unusual experiences.
We're getting national attention.
We're getting national attention. We're very successful. And a lot of those movies are now forgotten. And maybe it's time to sort of rediscover that some of them deserve to be pushed back out and remembered. And I think Shall We Dance is a good example.
Remember me.
Whereas Dirty Dancing Havana Nights can pretty much just fade away.
Yeah.
That
They
can.
could.
Then
Yeah.
Let's say
We can
goodbye.
remove it from history and not mess along.
Yeah, it's kind of just. Although, Brianne, did you see that TV remake?
I did not. I avoided it
Oh.
specifically because I did not want to relive something that was so great and see it so butchered and terrible.
I'm going to say this right now. You chose wisely.
Okay, good.
Because it is
Okay.
really, really bad.
As someone who has not seen the original, I don't care what's being butchered when I'm sitting down to watch a remake of Dirty Dancing.
You have no
on
context.
TV. I have
Yeah.
no context. I nothing to hang my hat on. It still sucks. It's
really
badly told, and the characters are really horribly sketched out, and
Yeah.
the Patrick Swayze character is just a sleaze bag.
And the new framing device where he ended up putting on a Broadway show
Yeah,
about
and
the
there's-
events of Dirty Dancing.
There's an epilogue where they meet as
I'm sorry,
adults,
what?
but still played by the same actors, and he turned Dirty Dancing into a hit Broadway show.
I
Yeah,
mean,
and
And there's a
she's-
moment, and
Broadway
she's
show.
grown up, married to another man, and has children, and they have this sort of
Yeah. And she
intense
just-
moment in the Broadway theater.
It
in the
opens
present
with her
day.
going to see the show, and then the movie we see, I guess, is the Broadway show, but it's not
So
actually
they-
a Broadway show because it's a
somewhat-
movie. Because they're actually there are real
something's
locations.
gotta give it.
Kind of. Oh, something's
Why?
gotta give. Oh, I have so many problems with something's gotta give. Oh, good
Should
old
review that
times.
movie.
Do you have some time to hang out and read some letters with us?
Okay.
Cool.
What,
so,
what time is it?
It
first of
is.
all?
Well, it's 3:30.
Oh.
Do you have to go? You have to go. Don't
I
you?
could probably read some letters.
Let's read a few letters. We haven't read letters in a
Let's do
little
it.
bit, and we keep soliciting them. So, again, our email is criticallyacclaimedfans@gmail.com. I know I know putting fans in there sounds self-serving, but all the other ones were taken. But feel free to ask us questions and bring up topics.
Do you want to do listeners? Critically acclaimed listeners?
That seemed long.
That is long.
It seemed a little long. Yeah.
Critically acclaimed email. At
criticallyacclaimed.com.
How exciting.
You ever see the movie Fear.com?
No.
It's about a haunted website called Fear.com. But here's the thing. They couldn't get Fear.com, so they called the website Fear.com.
Okay.
And they actually spelled out the word dot.
D-O-T. Yes, they did.
Fear.com.com.
Well, that's the title of the film, was Feardot.com. Like they actually spell out the word dot.
Hit me with those letters.
Do it!
Here's one from John.
Hi, John.
Hi, John. Dear Bibbs and Whitney, I hope I got it right. You misspelled my name. It's fine. There's no H in it. Nobody gets it right.
Nobody gets it right. We're fine.
I've been listening to your shows since May-ish, and it's really helped cement my love of film. On a recent episode in December, you guys joked about Hallmark films being shot in Winnipeg. Winnipeg is in close proximity to my small Canadian igloo village. I was surprised to know that other films have actually shot in Winnipeg. My friend got a chance to be in A Dog's Purpose.
Ooh. Speaking of Richard Gere.
And another film with Lucas Till that I can't remember.
I'm
Monster Trucks.
There you go!
I'm
Probably.
sure, yeah. He says he
Real
recalls
fast,
Lucas...
I was thinking of Hachi the dog, not A Dog's Purpose. Richard Gere wasn't at A Dog's Purpose. So I want to correct that before someone furiously writes a comment on YouTube. I know how many Richard Gere fans we have in the audience.
Richard Gere could be listening. We don't want to offend his sensibilities.
I like a lot of Richard Gere movies.
So I'm going with Monster Trucks for Lucas Till.
I like Monster Trucks.
I like it too.
He says...
Preach is adorable.
Anyway, our listener's friend says he recalls Lucas Till being a snobbish dick on set.
Aww, that's sad.
too bad.
Do you have any good stories about meeting celebrities and being let down? Sorry about the length. This is my first time emailing.
Let down.
I haven't really hung out with celebrities that much. I've interviewed a lot, but it's always this really professional environment, and everyone's usually on their best behavior. So I don't have a lot of these horror stories. Like the closest I ever came was I was at a party and I was really bored, and it was just sort of hanging out in the back. And Milo Ventimiglia from Heroes, and I think he's on some other big show right now. He just happened to be, I guess he didn't want to be part of the party either. And we talked for like 10 minutes, and he was nice. That's it. That's what I got. I have no shitty stories.
Well, I don't have a shitty story, but like I served Ray Romano at a golf course once. That was fun. In San Jose. So it's kind of like, why is Ray Romano here? Like, what is this happening? There was that because I was a cart girl for a golf course. That's always fun.
Okay. Oh, jeez. Is that where you have to wear the armor and pick
Did they actually try to hit you with the golf balls? I heard that horror story. Okay.
No, I was the beverage cart girl. So they wanted to see me,
Oh, geez.
That's how that works.
Yeah.
And then there was a time when I was at this little place called Frank's Famous Cafe or whatever, and it's in Montrose. Tiny, tiny little place. It's right next to this motorcycle, like high-end motorcycle shop, which is kind of weird for Montrose because it's such a small area. That's like, why do you have this? The rest of the people that live here are not going to come here. Well, celebrities go there. So I was at this place, and this guy comes in behind me to order, and I look at him, and I was like, he looks just like someone I know. He looks just like my friend Mackenzie, like exactly. And I was like, I was about to talk to him to be like, oh my gosh, my friend looks exactly like you. And then later, I just decided not to. So then later I sat down, and there's only me and my friend Tallene, and then these two other people, one of the guys. And she was like, you know who's behind you right now? I was like, I have no idea who's behind me. And she's like, it's Ryan Reynolds and Alanis Morissette. And I was like, what? I was like, no wonder he looks like Mackenzie, because I've always said, like, hey, Mackenzie, you look like Ryan Reynolds.
I found out a celebrity story that I didn't know about because I was too young at the time. My dad worked with a guy who was, I believe, was in the Korean War, was in the army. And one day, someone stopped by to visit him because they were in the army together. Just an old friend from the army.
Okay.
And then we ended up having lunch. I was like a toddler with my dad, his old friend Jack, and Jack's old friend from the army, Mr. Clint Eastwood.
Oh, wow.
And apparently, Clint Eastwood was super nice and like played with me and everything like that. And I have no memory of this whatsoever, but everyone in the family remembers it.
That's awesome.
It's kind of neat, actually.
This isn't really my celebrity story because I didn't get to meet her, but my mom was out at, I think it was at a death penalty vigil. She was protesting the death penalty, and she ran into this woman, and they started having a conversation, and they ended up corresponding a little bit, and she ended up coming over to her house, and this woman was named Eugene Palsy. and she directed Cry Freedom and A Dry White Season.
Oh,
and a
wow.
few
Wow.
other, like really serious films about apartheid in
Yeah.
South Africa. And she came over to dinner and she told us stories about making these movies.
Wow.
And
I think Richard Attenborough did Cry Freedom.
oh, not Cry Freedom. She did A Dry White Season and,
Okay.
And another notable film whose title I can't remember right now.
I will look it up. Yeah.
But yeah, she in A Dry White Season. She also worked with Marlon Brando on one of her movies, and she told us this really long story about what a diva he was on set, and how he had to have an earpiece in his ear
Yes,
so he
and
could
fed
get
his lines.
his lines
Yep.
fed into him. And
I've
you know,
heard that many
yeah,
times.
the story about like why he does like all those sort of gestures and pauses. He's actually hearing his dialogue before he says it, so he's kind of stalling. Evidently he hadn't worked in a long time, and this was like his big comeback role, and he had gained a lot of weight, and he was really self-conscious about his size.
Which one?
Dry White Season, 1989.
And he played a lawyer, so he had a robe, and he had a black robe, so he was okay with that. And he was so nervous about going on set that when it was time for him to go to set, it took him about like several hours to get from his dressing room to the set because he had to stop and talk to everybody and feel like he was okay again. And evidently he had like conversations with like the gaffer guys, and he seemed like this really gregarious guy when he was really just nervous.
Interesting. Huh.
So those are our stories.
Those are our stories.
Yeah, there you go. What else have we got? Let's do a couple more letters.
Let's see. This one comes from Dale. Hello, Dale.
Hello.
Hey, Bibbs and Whitney. I was so happy you two found a new home with the Schmoes. Oh, we are happy too.
They're nice.
I died a little inside when you announced your abrupt end of the B-Movies podcast.
So did we.
C'est la vie. I'm loving your new format, and your episode on Bicycle Thieves reminded me of how much I love that film, so I bought the Criterion Blu-ray right away.
Oh, yay!
Glad we can remind you.
That's good. We don't get a cut of that. We just like that people like cinema.
Yeah, well, especially a great film like Bicycle Thieves.
Yeah.
Goodness. In the interest of keeping this letter short, I wanted to give you the list of my favorite films from the 2000s. I must say there were an incredible amount of great films to come out in that decade, and it's a shame there are so many I'm not mentioning here. It's a long list of honorable mentions that I'm going to skip, but the top 10 are number 10, Orphan. Okay. Orphan is great.
We're big fans of Orphan.
Orphan is
one of the most irresponsible movies ever made.
irresponsible. I don't want to tell you what the twist is, but it's
really
great.
gross.
Number 9, a tie between Chicago and Hairspray. I know how much you both hate Chicago. I kind of hate Chicago.
I don't hate Chicago. I disliked that for an entire generation, people thought Chicago was the way movie musicals were and should be.
Yeah.
That the musical numbers were dream sequences and that you edited around everyone because no one is capable of dancing anymore. That pissed me
I
off.
didn't
Chicago
like
is
that either.
such a good show, and they turned it into such a crappy movie. Hairspray's fine. Number 8, Mulholland Drive. Good choice. Number 7, Talk to Her. It's a good movie.
I'm not the biggest fan, but I appreciate why everyone loves it.
Okay. I think All About My Mother is still Ahmad Avar's kind of crown jewel.
Okay.
Number 6, Hard Candy. That's a rough one.
Okay.
Seen Hard Candy?
No.
Brutal.
It's a brutal film. Ellen Page. Number 5, Old Boy. Also a brutal film.
Yeah.
Number 4, The Dark Knight.
Great movie.
Number 3, A History of Violence.
Also a great movie.
Number 2, Casino Royale.
I like that movie.
And number 1, Zodiac. Good choice.
Zodiac is great. I like how insidiously Zodiac has ended up on everyone's favorite films list. Like, no one cared. Critics liked it. No one cared. Didn't lose money, but didn't make money either. And now, like, 10 years later or whatever it is, everyone's just like, you know how Zodiac's like one of the best movies? Yeah.
I need to see that. I worked on a movie called The Zodiac.
Ah.
Yeah, not this one.
Was it
Yeah.
about the
This
Zodiac
one.
Killer?
Was it? It was.
Okay. There's a
Wouldn't it
couple.
be amazing if it's just about, astrology in general?
Yeah.
It could be.
It could have been.
Doesn't that
Could've
sound like the
been.
kind of movie like Gerard Butler and like Hilary Swank would have made, like as a twofer with P.S. I Love You?
astrologers?
Yeah, it's like, I'm living every day by what my horoscope says. I'm supposed to fall in love.
that
You'll
could be
do. Like,
You will be murdered today. Who will murder me? Or I do a fantasy film where the Zodiac, like there's 12 Zodiac monsters, like a giant scorpion and a snake handler, because Ophiuchus is a thing now.
what was that movie with Angelina Jolie where she was a reporter? She had a really platinum blonde hair.
Oh, Life or something like
Yeah,
that.
and Tony Shalhoub played this like soothsayer, and she interviewed him on TV, and he said like in a week you're gonna die. And she changes everything, and she decides to live life to the fullest. And I kept
And then she
thinking,
doesn't die?
I kept thinking the plot would be, like the twist would be, he meant she was going to dye her platinum blonde hair, which she does, if memory serves.
geez.
But then she actually does die, and then come back for like, she dies for like a minute. And then I'm like, I don't feel like you maybe
You could have included that detail.
I don't know. Like, there's a lot of... Okay, whatever.
Then he sees her again, and she still has the hair, and he's like, "You didn't die."
I don't know. Like, there's like, actually, speaking of Ed Burns, he plays like the love interest in that one, and there's one of the worst product placement speeches I've ever heard in my life is in that movie. It's like, yeah, I don't know. Like, I didn't like her at first. I found it really abrasive, but you know those delicious Altoids? You know, everyone likes Altoids. Well, they're curiously strong. And so is she. And I'm like, wow, I wish I was kidding you. That's it. I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but that's in the movie. It's a real incredible moment.
Oh, my God.
Like, I wonder how much Altoids paid for that. That was a really impressive
I can't help but think of the scene in State and Maine, the David Mamet film, where they're trying to make this really kind of serious period drama, and they were able to get a sponsor, and it's really great. Okay, well, who's your sponsor? Well, it turns out it's a website called bazoomer.com. It's like, well, this is set in 1900. Where are we going to fit in the phrase bazoomer.com? And at the end, they find a way. They put it on the side in the background.
That movie is about making the movie, right? This is
State of Maine, yeah.
It's coming back to me.
Someone needs to do like a good supercut of all the worst product placement moments. One of my favorites is in Rambo First Blood Part 2, which really should be called Second Blood. But
more blood.
There's a moment where Rambo is like being told, like, okay, we need you to go across the border and rescue our POWs. Everything's gonna be... Hold on a second, you want a Coke? And there's like a Coke machine in the general's office. And he stops, he puts a quarter in, gets a Coke.
Wow.
Anyway, they're being tortured to death, and we need you to rescue them. And I'm like, holy shit!
And then Joan Crawford bursts in and starts beating him with a Pepsi bottle. What? No, just watch any Joan Crawford film and look for the Pepsi.
Well, she had money in Pepsi.
She married the Pepsi guy. Yeah.
So there was Pepsi everywhere.
So yeah, there's Pepsi everywhere. And I think part of the big rivalry between Betty and Joan was that like Betty would send her like cans of Coke, like just to be a dick. It's pretty hilarious.
I hope that's true.
All right, we'll do one more letter.
One more letter. This one comes from Kyungjin. Dear Witney and Bibbs, I'm your nameless follower from Korea, and I will be nameless no more. My name is Jin.
Hello.
Hi, Jin.
Hello, Jin. And I have a question about subtitles. In my home, foreign movies, mostly from Hollywood, split the box office with domestic movies about 50-50. Most of these films have subtitles, and my generation, after generations especially, have been trained to look at movies with subtitles. I think this created a somewhat troubling viewing habit of treating movies like books, only receiving the information by text and not focusing on other important parts of experiencing a visual medium. Now, you might say that film students and aficionados watch subtitles all the time, but they are already trained compared to the public. Do you think this might be a problem further down the line? Subtitle, look, there's only so many options if you want to watch a film that is not made in your native language or you don't speak the language. Now, here in America, we have dubbing and we have subtitles, and we're also one of the few nations that does not encourage their youth to learn a second language when they're still kids.
Yeah, you learn it in high school after your brain is kind of hardwired and it's harder to learn.
I've been around Europe, and in a lot of nations, they're just multilingual, just naturally. Yes. They learn multiple languages. We don't do that in America.
We should.
Because we're dumb that way. The subtitle thing is one of our only options if you want to hear it in its original language. And yes, your eye is going to be darting down to the bottom of the screen to read the dialogue.
That's lame. That's not ideal.
I prefer that to dubbing. I'd rather hear the original actors' original voices, even if I don't understand the language.
Because you're getting a good performance. The problem with
you're
dubbing is that
a good rhythm of the language. Even if you don't understand the language, you're getting a lot more inflection and rhythm through the performance.
Dubbing is frequently... There are exceptions, and there's some like really, really good, like Disney's dubs of like the Studio Ghibli films are actually like, for the most part, there's a few I prefer the original like dramatically, but they're pretty good dubs. If you only see the dubs, I'm not going to ding you too hard that time. Yeah. But for non-top flight animated movies like that, usually the dubbing isn't nearly as good. The actors aren't nearly as invested. They're not there. They're not in the moment. They don't have the freedom to give a natural performance because they have to work within the parameters of the film that they have. They have these 3 seconds to say these 2 sentences.
Which, to be fair, is a talent unto itself.
It is, but you're not getting the original text, which is why a lot of cinephiles, snobs if you will say, subtitles or die. And I've been that. But you're right. You're constantly like darting your eyes up and down, and that's not the most natural way to watch something, but you're picking your battles.
Yeah. Here's my advice. For subtitles, sit further back in the theater. You can take in the entire screen within your field of vision without having to turn your head or swivel your eyes too much more. You can sort of see the entire image, and you can probably just read without necessarily having to look right at it,
or at least not dramatically
or you just like
moving
glance
your eyes.
at it.
Yeah.
And I think you'll be able to get a lot more of the film's visual language along with the actual audible language simultaneously.
It's a fair point. Sometimes, however, not all subtitles are created equal. Some subtitles are smaller than others. Some subtitles, they don't do this as much anymore, but I remember back when I was a kid and I was watching subtitle movies in the 80s and 90s, they wouldn't always put an outline around the letters, so if the screen was light, there would be light letters on the light screen, you couldn't read it.
Well, here's a little bit of a technical thing. They can't do that. Because they can do it on home video because you can overlay whatever video layers you want and not lose any visual fidelity. If you want to put a layer of color around a subtitle on film, you have to layer a second layer of cellulose over it, and the film all of a sudden becomes like smoky and indistinct, and it's really ugly to look at.
True, but I have seen them do things that actually were able to.
Now that it's all digital photography, it doesn't matter.
True.
At the time, they had to use a laser etch and etch right into the film so they could not lose any visual fidelity. And you can't put anything; you can just turn it white.
I know. I'm just saying it was hard.
White on white subtitles, sure. Any film with subtitles, yes. See subtitled films, see international cinema, see what the world has to offer, because it's going to expand your diet and your vocabulary amazingly. It's going to give you voices that you didn't know you needed.
And I want to say this right now. I know I had a speech about how streaming media has had this huge problem where we lose a lot of movies and they're just not available anymore. A lot of foreign films are more available now than they ever were before because of that. And that's it. It's a double-edged sword. There is some really good stuff because of it, and a lot of people have more access, particularly to contemporary foreign cinema than they ever have before. I think we're at this point now. We're still very almost nationalistic with the way that we think of the entertainment industry. Like, we still think about, like, it was the #1 highest grossing movie of the year. Domestic. Who gives a shit? I don't understand why that it might matter for like marketing purposes, but money is money. It's not like they're gonna we got this money overseas, so throw that in a different pile. We're gonna put that in a different bank. It's all your money now.
If it's an American production, I understand that, but so many of these big American studios are just international conglomerates now anyway.
Yeah.
So,
but I hear people talk about we only talk about like theatrically released movies. This was theatrically released overseas. Doesn't count. Says fucking who? Why not? It counts over there. It's a weird arbitrary distinction. The Ewok movies are real Star Wars movies.
They are.
Thank you.
Jinx.
And dance movies is a real genre.
Yeah, it is a real genre.
I don't understand that. It's
But
a
I do
subgenre,
agree
it's a
with
genre.
Jen in saying that you will miss some stuff. Probably not as much as you would. Have you guys seen this video where it's like, it's supposed to be like about you paying attention? It was like, count how many times the green team passes the basketball. Have you seen this?
No.
That's okay. So then you're like focusing on like watching them pass the basketball. And then it's like comes to the end and it's like, how many times did they pass the basketball? And then you like have your answer in your head or whatever. And then it says, okay, but did you notice the gorilla?
Yeah.
And like, I was like, no, I didn't notice the gorilla. There was a gorilla. Wait. And then like a gorilla walks by like during the thing and like waves and then goes by. I was like, oh, I did not see the gorilla.
There was an incredible, it was a melancholy version of this, but there was this incredible like sort of ad campaign PSA a few years ago that was like this couple of minute story about two teenagers falling in love in high school. And it was like different scenes of them like at a library making eyes at each other.
And then you see the person behind them.
And then you find, and then right at the prom when they're going to kiss, someone breaks through the door and you see a silhouette of a kid with a gun. And then you rewatch the whole thing and you realize that in the background, while you were distracted with your bullshit teenage problems, there was a kid with real problems that no one was noticing. And I got to tell you, that was brilliant cinema.
That was a good one.
It was manipulative, but it was manipulative for a good reason, and it was really well handled. I wish I could remember what it was called, but that's really.
I remember that one.
Yeah. I saw a Tiny Toon Adventures episode with something similar.
You know, Tiny Toons is on Hulu now.
Yay!
Hooray!
I like it better than Animaniacs, but I'm the only one.
Oh, that's another one where it's been gone for so long. People don't.
People just don't really.
People don't remember what a great
talking about Tiny Toons
what a
anymore.
hero Babs Bunny was to a whole generation. She was so confident and awesome.
And Buster and Plucky and all the rest.
Especially
Aw,
Babs.
Plucky.
There was Babs and Plucky were competing to see who could get the most number of pictures in the yearbook. That was their big drama. They were they're joining all of the clubs and barging in behind and trying to get into many pictures. And it turns out the same kid was in the background of every single picture, and this unknown character ended up getting the award for most pictures in the yearbook.
I wonder if that's based on the Jeffrey Dahmer story.
Sure, I don't know.
Do you know what that is?
I don't know what the Jeffrey Dahmer story is.
There was a practical joke that they did when Jeffrey Dahmer was in high school, where the yearbook team decided to put Jeffrey Dahmer in every yearbook picture, like every club picture, even if he wasn't in it. And then when they found out, like someone noticed, like before the yearbook went out, they like crossed out his face. So if you get like the yearbook from Jeffrey Dahmer's like senior year, he's like in every picture, but his face is crossed out. It's super creepy, and weird.
Wow,
were they doing this to like?
Scary.
They thought it was funny.
Call out the freaky kid, or
they just thought it was funny. Well,
okay.
they were ostensibly. It's all in that movie, My Friend Dahmer, which is really, really good. It's all about Dahmer's high school years, and like it was written by a guy who knew Jeffrey Dahmer in high school, who saw a bunch of the red flags and did nothing like everyone else did. And yeah, they thought he was this funny weirdo, and they didn't realize he had huge problems and desperately needed someone to notice those things before something terrible happened, and no one did.
Right.
But yeah, it's this weird thing. I wonder if there's like this really dark Tiny Toons reference to Jeffrey Dahmer.
You know, given how bored the writers on those shows got, they threw in stuff like did you ever see Freakazoid? Did you get as far as Freakazoid?
No.
No.
Freakazoid was actually
I
pretty
don't know
good.
what Freakazoid is.
Freakazoid was the Animaniacs superhero show, but they gave up on being a superhero show immediately and just became like really Dadaist and weird.
It's like Adult Swim, pre-Adult Swim. Like, it's way ahead of its time. But yeah, they were like throwing in, it's like, we're going to do references to Ed Wood, even though that opened last week, which is something that amused us, and we're going to throw in a reference because it's fun. We're going to have an entire episode where they sing songs from Hello Dolly, because kids love Hello Dolly.
There was the A Summer
Wally
Place
does.
episode.
Yeah,
I love A Summer Place.
Everyone loves A Summer Place. If you've heard of it, and no kids have.
No one ever talks about A Summer Place. My God. I'm so glad I came here today so we can relive Haley Mills in A Summer Place.
Was Troy Donahue in that one as well? Is that
I
Troy
don't
Donahue?
know.
Okay. He just
Leonard Maltin shows up as himself. It's great.
All right, everybody, that is the Critically Acclaimed podcast. Thank you so much to Brianne Chandler, Miss Movies herself, for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad I could be here.
Brianne,
Talk dance.
Where can people find your amazing work?
Oh, man. You can find me on Twitter at Miss Movies, Instagram, Miss_Movies. I do a show on Wednesdays and Thursdays on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Miss Movies. 6 Degrees of Feature Film is on Wednesdays at 10:30 usually, and Film Therapy is on Thursdays at 10:30.
And I've been honored to be on both shows, and they are great, and I highly recommend everyone check them out.
Got to get Witney on.
You do.
I'm not sure if you want to know what kind of films I watch for therapy, but all right.
Okay, well, then I guess we don't. I'm just joking. So that's where you can find me.
There you go. So you got to stop watching 8-hour Bellatar films that are all one shot.
Sounds great.
Yeah, I know. You son of a...
Sign me up. In other words, you're a bigger celebrity than us, and
sure,
we are honored whenever you fly like a phoenix into our presence. And we just stand blinded by your light. Yeah. We'll be back
rise
next week.
from the ashes like a phoenix.
But yeah, we'll be back next week. We'll be back with a review of Orca. Mm-hmm. And something else we haven't decided yet.
We haven't decided the B feature for Orca, but not Jaws.
It's too obvious.
I'm going to say it right now.
No, it's the most obvious thing in the world.
We're not going to do Jaws.
Come on.
How about, oh crap, I can't even think of Deep Blue Sea. There we go.
I do like Deep Blue Sea.
Well, the idea is we want to pair it with like a classic movie.
I think Deep Blue Sea is great, but whatever.
What? It's no classic.
Okay, maybe not. It's
Jaws
a cult
3.
classic, maybe.
Jaws 3D. There you go.
Jaws the Revenge. Even better. Because that's when he got his revenge. But yeah, so we'll be back next week with a review of Orca. Go onto the Schmoville Facebook page. We will be soliciting on a Facebook post around the time this episode drops on Sunday morning for more recommendations for bad movies to put on our various polls. We have a lot of suggestions, but we also see that our list of suggestions have a lot of really bad movies that aren't on it. So by all means, just throw out new titles, and we're gonna use it to spill out.
You should post the list of what we have. And then like
a lot.
It's true. We have like 100 titles.
It's a lot. It's cartoonishly large. But even so, we just want to keep collecting more. We just want to keep it exciting and fresh. And we'll have new reviews of other films. I forgot to check what's coming out next week, but I promise I'll see something.
See something. Damn it.
Is the new Maze Runner next week? I think.
Yes. I don't know.
That sounds like a January release.
I like the Maze Runner movies. So that's one possibility as well. But yeah, we'll have more podcasty things. Anyway, I'm on Twitter at William Bibbiani.
I'm at Witney Seibold. That's Witney with no H and Seibold with an EI.
You can also hear other podcasts, Cancel Too Soon, where we review television series lasted only one season or less. This week, we're reviewing a show in which an undead cop teams up with the devil to catch escapees from hell. It's called Brimstone. It's one of our most requested shows. And if you want to hear more of Miss Movies, she was on an episode a couple of months ago where we reviewed Journeyman, and that show was great.
Yes. Love Journeyman.
Journeyman kicked ass. So that's what's going on there. Am I forgetting anything? We were on the Twitters.
We mentioned it all.
Schmoes Know iTunes feed has other shows on it. If you only listen to us, that's nice of you, but you should check out the others as well. And you can listen to us on YouTube, on the SK Plus YouTube channel.
That's true. If you don't have iTunes, our show does go up on YouTube every Sunday.
Yeah, and that's also cool because you can leave comments and interact with people listen to it, so that's also fun. So everybody, thank you very, very much for listening, and never forget, everyone's a critic.
I want to go to the midnight show. I'm sorry, what?